we're going into a time where we see the world trying to hide the light that Yah has given us, trying to find a way to stamp out anything that might be good, anything that might be moral. We witness every day the world just trying to take advantage. But what I want us to do is look at a time of rededication. I know we've got a lot of a very rich text within this parsha. We have a lot that we can talk about, but I want to go to the season that we're in right now. We have hope through the Father that we can carry on, we can continue. We have hope of renewal. We have hope of mercy. We have hope of salvation. And I want to look at this today because so much gets lost in translation with the period that we're in right now. And it becomes a little controversial for a lot of people, just seeing that a time of rededication can start to get a little fuzzy, the true meaning of where we stand today and what we should be doing. We all know that Hanukkah is not a Moedim, it's not an appointed time. It's a time of celebration. But just what is that time of celebration? Where does this come from? Is it something that we should do? Is it something that we should not do? Are there 8 days of miracle? Or just what is the true basis of it? For me, it's, we see donuts and sweets and fun things and games, and that's good. Like donuts, like ice cream. But what are we really celebrating when we go into this time? What are we really doing? Is it 8 days of oil that miraculously continued to burn in one pot of beaten pure olive oil? Or just what is it? Where does it come from? So we have one good account of Yeshua during Hanukkah, or, not to be misconstrued, the Feast of Dedication. Hanukkah simply means dedication. And it talks that Yeshua was walking in the temple around Solomon's colonnade, and we see a picture here that I would like to go into, but we're going to go a little past this right now. The Judean leaders surrounded Yeshua, said, "How long will you hold us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us outright." Yeshua answered them, said, "I told you, but you don't believe me. The works I do in my Father's name testify concerning me." And he goes on to say, "My sheep know my voice." And just to hit on this a little bit, and not to get too far off track or too deep on this, but he's not talking about just the sound of his voice. We talked last week about the kind of like the manifestation of what we do. If the Father lives within us, the things we do with our hands, the words we say, how we view people, how we hear the word, and how we hear other people or work with other people is directly affected by what lives in our heart, out of the abundance of our heart. So, we have to kind of see that he wasn't just speaking about the sound of his voice, the timbre, the bass, however his voice sounded at the time. That's not what he was speaking of alone. I'm sure if somebody heard him, they would go, "Hey, Yeshua is speaking over here. Jesus is speaking over here. Let's go hear what he has to say." But what he wanted is for us to know that it's his voice. It's what he's saying. It's how he's teaching. It's what he's bringing forward. Did he teach us a new religion? No. Did he bring it so it would be something new and easy for us, or did he just enhance the Torah for us? Just enhance the Torah. Excuse me. We're going to battle with a little rough voice, but y'all bear with me today. So what we want to do, going past this, here it's saying that Yeshua was walking in the temple, Solomon's temple, around the colonnades during Hanukkah or the Feast of Dedication. Also the Feast of Lights, Festival of Lights. It's been called many things throughout. And it's not what it's called, it's what its purpose is, right? There are many things we can get caught up in. There's times that we can look and try to work in a detail so that it makes more sense to us. We could reason out just why they celebrated this time, but instead of just reasoning within ourselves, because the Word tells us not to lean on our own understanding, we should dig. We should get in a little deeper, excuse me, and know exactly what the Word says about it. So is this the first time it's ever mentioned? This is just the 3 different translations. The Orthodox Jewish Bible says, then the Chag, the festival of Hanukkah, took place in Jerusalem. The New King James, now it was the Feast of Dedication, and it was winter. And the King James it was at Jerusalem, the Feast of Dedication. So steady there on that explanation of what time of year it was. And again, we've already said this is not a Moedim. This is not an appointed feast. It's a time that the people wanted to celebrate something. So how were they celebrating? Let's go back here for a second. It says, it shows that the celebration was observed even during Yeshua's time. But does this tell us that Yeshua was celebrating Hanukkah? No, doesn't really back that statement up. If we go to Luke 4 and drop back into, let's look at 14, we'll start there. Said Yeshua returned in the power of the Ruach to Galilee, and news about him went out through all of the surrounding regions. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone was praising him. 15 gives us a little hint about why he might have been in the synagogue that day. It says, and he came to Nazareth, where he had been raised. As was his custom, he went into the synagogue on Shabbat, and he got up to read. So can we ascertain that he was there celebrating the Festival of Lights, dedication? It was a big deal in that time. We look at some of the things I went through, really picked up from FFOZ, First Fruits of Zion, a few of the historical markers that would have been going on at that time. It tells us that in the first century, small oil lamps were lit in remembrance of the Hasmoneans' military victory over the Seleucids, the cleansing of the temple from pagan impurity, and the rededication of the altar. We know that fire and light was a staple of this feature of the first century Hanukkah observation from 3 first century sources. The author of 2 Maccabees calls Hanukkah the festival of fire, commemorating the reinstitution of the altar's fire during Hanukkah. You can read that in 2 Maccabees 1 and 18. And guys, I know this is unusual. I usually don't go to these outside sources or to the sages, the rabbis, the Torah scholars, if you want to call, but this is a historical marker that's there. Josephus calls Hanukkah the festival of lights, and an early first century rabbinic tradition dating back to 115 CE recounts how the Jews lit Hanukkah candles in rebellion to Trajan, and that's out of the Jerusalem Talmud. And it also tells us, that enormous torches were lit in the temple courtyard during the 8 nights of Hanukkah, just as they did during Sukkot. Very important. Hold on to that information about Sukkot. Hallel would have been sung in the temple. Passages from Numbers 7, 8, and 28 would have been read. And the account of how the candles would have been lit for the Hanukkah lamp, how the mitzvah for the lighting of the Hanukkah lamp would have been fulfilled with 1 candle for the entire household. The zealous, those who were jealous and anxious and hopeful and more outgoing would have been lighting one candle for each member of the household. And it said the most zealous lit 8 lights for each household member. So we see that there's 8 days set aside. We see that the number 8 comes in, but where does this actually come from? How do we get into this 8 days of celebration? And is the celebration just to light 8 lights throughout the week, one at a time, actually 2 at a time? You would light the helper and then the day's candle. So how do we get into this? Where does this really come from? Yes. Yeah, but yeah, it has nothing to do with this actually. We're going back. We're going to look at Solomon and the dedication of the first temple. Remember David, King David, Solomon's father, wanted to build a temple for the Lord. The Lord said, you can't do it. You have blood upon your hands and you've caused other nations to blaspheme against me, to not believe that he existed. So David's antics caused him not to be able to build the temple. But he said, your son's going to build it. So we see Solomon, if you read starting in 2 Chronicles 1, start leading up to this, we get to the point that the temple is ready to be dedicated. And it's falling upon Sukkot, heading into Shemini Atzeret. And it tells us that when Solomon finished praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of Yah filled the house. The Kohanim could not even enter in because the Shekinah glory was so thick that they could not even enter into the house. And when all the children of Israel saw the fire and the glory, they bowed down on the pavement with their faces to the ground, prostrating themselves and praising Yah, saying, we read this last week, for he is good and his mercy endures forever. He had brought the temple among the people. They made sacrifices. This is an incredible number. It says King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep. And they dedicated the house of Yah. The Kohanim stood at their post, as did the Levites with musical instruments, and they would praise out, sing out, for his mercy endures forever. And all of Israel stood. They were in the presence celebrating. It goes on to say that at that time, Solomon observed the feast for 7 days, and all of Israel with him, a very great assembly from Lebo Hamath to the brook of Egypt. And on the 8th day they held a solemn assembly, for they had celebrated the dedication of the altar for 7 days and the feast for 7 days. Sukkot and dedication of the temple. 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the 7th month, he sent the people away to their tents, joyful and glad of heart, for the goodness of Yah had done for David, Solomon, and Israel, his people. So are we starting to get a little better link to why 8 days? The original dedication of the house came in an 8-day period. A solemn assembly on the 8th day, 7 days of celebration during Sukkot, sacrifices, dedication of the altar, cleansing it, getting it ready for Yah to possess his home, right? His house, his meeting place with us. But now we see the celebration of Hanukkah kind of starts to take on a little different meaning for the people. Wrong or right? I don't think it's wrong. But we are deterring from the original, what I would say is the Feast of Dedication, that maybe Yeshua would have been more inclined to notice, to observe. So in the year 168 BC, the Syrian king sent soldiers in. They desecrated the temple. They offered unclean animals. They abolished Judaism. They outlawed the observance of Shabbat and all of the festivals, as well as circumcision. Altars and idols were set up for the worship of Greek gods, and he offered the Jewish people two options: conversion or death. And on the 25th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev, in 168 BCE, the temple was renamed for the Greek god Zeus. Taken over, defiled, foreign influence upon the temple. But we see that if you go into Maccabees, we're going to go through these, I'm not going to read, said that 2 years later the king sent the Mysian commander to the cities of Judah. He came to Jerusalem with a strong force. There they installed a sinful race, transgressors of the law who fortified themselves within it. They stored up weapons and provisions and took over. And they plundered and collected all that was holy from Israel. They shed innocent blood, but a Jewish resistant movement led by a priestly family known as the Hasmoneans or Maccabees resisted. The head of the family was Mattathias, an elderly man whose son Judah became the chief strategist, military leader of the resistance, and although they were outnumbered, they miraculously won two major battles, routing the Syrians decisively. Is there any wonder once you turn back to the Father and you go with an aching heart for the goodness that's the Father's, for what is true and what is good? Is there any wonder that the Father will not interject for you? It goes on to tell us that his heart was torn. He didn't understand why he was alive. Why was he born to see the ruin of the people, the holy city? And he wanted that to be taken care of by the Father. They tore their garments. They mourned bitterly. And when, that's me, we're not going to read the whole thing. Is there something I need to let you see? Is 1 Maccabees 2 and 11. We just had this up there to show that the Gentiles had defiled the glory of the temple, and Mattathias and his sons tore their garments, an outer show of mourning, and it said they mourned bitterly. And he was given the chance, because he was an outstanding person, by the king's military. He was given the chance to pay homage to the king. And he couldn't do it. He cried out, he said, "Heaven forbid that we should forsake the law and the commandments. We will not obey the words of the king by departing from our religion in the slightest degree." How are we standing day by day as we're going along in the world, and the world wants us to comply? Are these our words each and every day? Are we resisting? Are we pushing back and saying, no, we won't even do it to the slightest degree? I pray that we're as zealous as this Father and his Son's were. He was moved with fury. They stood up against. He even called out for those who would stand up with him, said, all those who are zealous for the law and stand by the covenant, follow me. They routed the Gentile armies. They sent them fleeing. They chased them down as far as they wanted, and they put them all to flight. They saved the law from the hands of the Gentiles and the kings, and did not, I love this part, did not allow the sinner to triumph. A decisive victory. And the praise they give was, all the Gentiles shall know that there is one who redeems and delivers Israel. They went out, they did their battle. Says, now the enemies have been crushed. Let us go in and purify the sanctuary and rededicate it. So the whole army assembled and went up to Mount Zion. They found the sanctuary desolate, altar desecrated, gates burned, weeds growing in the courts. and the priest chambers were demolished. They went in, they built back, they purified the sanctuary, they rebuilt the altar. Listen to this. They looked at the altar, and they decided, since it had been desecrated in the way it had been desecrated, it could not stand. They took the stones and removed them from there and put them in a special place where unclean stones could be. And they brought in new stones, rebuilt the altar. Sometimes you have to rebuild that altar. Sometimes you have to look in and see that the purification is gone. The desecration has defiled it enough that you cannot continue. But now, maybe I should clarify that. Do we rebuild our spiritual altar ourselves? Father has to be part of that rebuilding process. It says they stored the stones in a suitable place on the Temple Mount. So they got them out and they built new. And started offering sacrifices according to what? The law on the new altar for burnt offerings that they had made. And on the anniversary of the day on which the Gentiles had desecrated, on that very day, it was rededicated with songs, harps, lyres, and cymbals. Now, can we agree that if the word gives that, we're rededicating a day after it was defiled? I'm going to go with that word. And it says, for 8 days they celebrated the dedication of the altar and joyfully offered burnt offerings and sacrifices of deliverance and praise. For 8 days they celebrated. For 8 days and joyfully offered burnt offerings and sacrifices of deliverance and praise. Now suddenly, we have an altar that was desecrated, that was defiled. The first dedication was 8 days, and now we have another 8 days set aside. And again, in 1 Maccabees 4, you can read, for 8 days they celebrated the dedication of the altar. And if we drop down to 59 in 1 Maccabees 4, it says, Judas and his brothers and the entire assembly of Israel decreed that every year for 8 days, from the 25th day of the month, the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness on the anniversary. So what are we celebrating here? This is just reiterating, says, since we shall be celebrating the purification of the temple on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, we thought it right to inform you that you too may celebrate the Feast of Booths and of the fire that appeared when Nehemiah, the rebuilder of the temple and the altar, offered sacrifices. They're spreading that throughout. Now what had they just missed? What holy day, what Moedim had they just missed? The 8-day celebration of Sukkot, 7 days of Sukkot and Shemini Atzeret. They're saying, let's do it now. Let's give that celebration. This is a mirror of the dedication of the temple the first time. This is not 8 days of miraculous oil. That account comes from some couple of hundred years later after the accounting of this. So what is it really? What is this season about? Sure, it's a civil celebration, moved into a religious kind of format, but it's something that they celebrated every year according to the dedication of the temple. In the beginning, starting with Solomon. Could Yahweh allow a little pot of beaten oil to last for 8 days? He could have made it last 80 years. That's nothing to him. He created everything. Could he bring fire? He made a bush burn without being consumed. He's not afraid of trying something new, but he doesn't have to. He did not have to create a new thing. I don't deny anyone, if they want to celebrate 8 days of miraculous oil, celebrate it. But if you want to celebrate what the original tone was for this time, we have to celebrate the dedication of the temple to begin with. Is there anything wrong with doing that? Because since it is a biblical, since it is historical, since it is written, that's what the original celebration was for. There's no account of the provisions of oil lasting for 8 days. Could it have happened? Absolutely. But the real reason for this, from Solomon to Judas, was the dedication and rededication of the temple, and that was the focus of the 8 days celebration. So is it okay to have donuts and fun and food and celebrate the fire that fell, as they wrote, and rededicated the temple? Is it even better to celebrate the first dedication of the temple? You can wind them together. Does that hurt anything? I don't think so. As I said, it's not a moedim, but we have to kind of start looking at, really, what is our focus? What is our focus at this time? Anybody? It's a rhetorical question. No one has to answer if they don't want. It's your heart. It's your heart. What is the seat of our lives? We go back to John 2. Yeshua said, He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. And they looked back at this grand temple that had been built, and they're like, no way, dude. Maybe they didn't say dude, I don't know. 46 years this temple was being built, and you will raise it up in 3 days. Now, could he have raised up the stones and the gold and the furnishings of the temple in 3 days? Absolutely. But Yeshua was talking about the temple of his body. That temple that dwelled amongst us. And he said, if you tear it down, I'll build it back. And in that, he was redefining that temple, not the one of stone and gold, not the one of courtyards and veils, not one of furnishings, but flesh and blood. The one where Yahweh was dwelling with man. And he goes on to remind us that our walk is just that. It's about light. 1 Corinthians 6:19, we're told that our body is a temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, who is in us, and we are not our own. Once we dedicate ourselves to the Father, do we belong to ourselves anymore? This whole reflection of identity, light, and holy living should be prominent within everything we do. Romans 12:1 says that, that we should present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to Yah. And that's our reasonable service. That's what is expected. That is just reasonable. But we want to look at it and see that if this temple, which was once clean, needed to be rededicated due to compromise, due to influence from the world, that compromise where we start allowing things within our lives that don't belong in our lives. The things that shouldn't belong in our heart, we start to hold dear. The things of the world that we dwell on rather than the things of Yah. But we want to see that foreign rule, that outside compromise causes us to be unworthy. Just like the original temple became unclean and could no longer be used, you saw in Mattathias when he said he saw the ruin of the people and the temple. He saw all of that fall apart. He saw the desecration of all of that was holy. And he, in his heart, realized that that was the temple of Yah. That was his dwelling place among men at the time. And he wanted to reclaim it. He had to go back and see the identity that was there, that it was a holy place, that it had been set apart and it was not for common use. Now they had made it common, they had desecrated it, and that's what happens with our temple. It becomes neglected. We neglect the Word. We neglect to follow the way we should follow the mitzvah, the commands from the Father. And we have to start rededicating. But how do we do that? Do we dedicate to Zeus? Because the temple was dedicated to Zeus. Do we dedicate ourselves to a football team? Baseball? Hockey? Race car driver? Who likes NASCAR? I've seen a lot of you drive. I think a lot of you like NASCAR. Do we dedicate ourselves to the things of the world, or do we dedicate our temple to the Father, realizing that we don't belong to ourselves, just as was written, says you no longer belong to yourself, you belong to the Father. He dwells within you. You have to dedicate yourself back to Yah. Are you going to fall away? Have you fallen away? Absolutely. We all fall short. We all have that worldly need to get along, to go along, to allow some little bit of something to come into our lives that's impure. And we have to get rid of it. In those days, the sacrifice was placed on the altar, the fire consumed it, but today we must be putting ourselves as that living sacrifice upon that altar each and every day, getting rid of the compromise, getting rid of the unclean habits, getting rid of the things that would separate us from the Father. He said He doesn't turn from us, we turn from Him. And how quickly and how fickle a people we are. Last week, it really hit home to me going through the lesson that we had, just how we show the Father how much we love Him. We talked about His love language to us, which was loyalty to covenant. Are we loyal enough to say that our altar is always clean? It's ready for habitation by the Most High. That our sacrifice is a correct sacrifice. It's easy to give up something that's not going to cost us, right? God, I'll give you 10 minutes this week. I'm going to stand over here and I'll talk to somebody about Jesus and make sure they get saved. I'll give you 10 minutes and we'll watch the clock. Well, Lord, it's 9 minutes. Nobody's come by, so I guess I'm going to move on my way. Are we willing to give when it's uncomfortable? Are we willing to give when, man, that fire has to consume everything within us? When we're that living sacrifice, we have to choose holiness in this dark world. It's so easy to choose the easy way to go. We cannot cleanse our altar by our own terms. We have to go with Yahweh's terms. We have to go with what He's set forward to say what the cleansing, I didn't put the scripture back in, what the cleansing aspect was. It said that when they dedicated the temple, they did it according to the laws of dedication. They didn't choose their own way. They didn't say, well, it used to be, 7 rams and 5 bulls, but today we're going to use birds and hamsters because, they're right here. It had to be by Yah's commands. And in our lives, we're not going to get anywhere with him dwelling within his spirit if we're not doing it in his way. But we have to choose that light. See, we're called out of darkness. 1 Peter 2 tells us that we're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that we may what? Proclaim the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. If we're talking about the Festival of Lights, let this be the reason. You've been called into that marvelous light. Share it. Don't be just going along and going, hey, I'm walking in the light. It's a light to my path. I can read better in the light. Not only are you receiving that light, but you must be bearers also of that light, sharing it, giving it. He said you are a royal priesthood. What did the priest do? Sacrificed in the temple. They also instructed. They also read. They gave to others. They brought knowledge to others. They bore the light so that others might see and have a different life. Today, I would like for all of us to just take a little time. You don't have to do it right now. But I want you to reflect on the fact that if Yah is supposed to be living within us, our temple should be clean, should be dedicated. It should be built correctly. My temple in the past has been built for the world, to accommodate the world. I'll pick on myself. My temple was meant for other pleasures, for the things that made me happy. But when I realized that living for the Father not only brought me closer to Him, but that also made me happy. Do I still have a little things that I have to work on every day? Absolutely. That's why it's a daily walk. It's a daily movement to put all of that back up on the altar, to make sure our altar is clean and ready at all times. Our prayer should be to Yahweh, to tell Him, to remind Him, to ask Him, to beg Him to take His rightful place again, to make us a living temple and let His light shine through us, that we can be the next step for the next person who needs to know, who's looking for that change. Another prayer, Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. David said this many times, search our hearts, cleanse that dwelling place, renew that fire of devotion within us, so that we may walk as children of light, rededicated through you, to you through Yeshua, our Messiah, through nothing else. Yeshua said He is the way, the truth, and the light. Through Him would flow rivers of living water. No other way are we going to reach the Father except through Him. He is that marvelous light. He is the one that lights our path. He's the one that will lead us on. And I would ask that we would take this time of rededicating our temple and cleansing our spiritual altar so that we can draw near to the Father. And the best part is to be separated from the world, set apart from doing the things of the world. We could go within 4 miles of here and you can find any church in that amount of time that would have an ideology or a dogma or a creed that you could follow to make life easier. But following the truth is the easiest way to go. We don't have to seek out what man would have us do. I don't believe that we want to be looking at the different ways to celebrate. I know we don't, we're not celebrating Christmas time. We're not celebrating 8 days of miraculous oil. Could it have happened? Okay, yeah, it could have happened. But man, we can look back in history, and it's so much easier to go back to Solomon's time and see why this holiday exists. Why did they do it? And it said when Solomon sent the people away to their tents, they went with happy hearts. They were so happy that the temple was there. It had been dedicated, and it was there for the Father to dwell in, to come in and meet with them. Can you imagine having seen the power of the Father overtake that building to where even the priests could not enter? The power that was displayed, and they went away happy that it was there dwelling amongst them. Are we that way today? Is your altar clean? Has your altar been rebuilt from the desecration, the defilement of the foreign gods? We remember the two brothers who went in and offered foreign fire at the altar, and Yah lashed out and killed them. Are we really wanting to offer what is not right to the Father? Today I would ask you as we go, not only to be a light to someone, but make sure that you're in alignment with Yah's word. As you give out that light, it should be the correct light. Is it okay to celebrate this time of year with our brothers and sisters who celebrate? Yes, but I want you to have understanding of what the original context was of this day. It's about dedication of the temple. Today we don't have a standing temple that sticks and stones and bricks and gold and furnishings and altars and menorahs. We don't have that. But what do we have? The Word tells us that we are that living temple. Our temple should be ready and adorned at all times for the Father to come in and meet with us, to dwell with us. And not only dwell with us, but for the fruits of the Spirit to come out from us. What we say, what we do, how we deal with people, how we hear people, how we see people. And still sometimes I'm real quick to judge. I know y'all don't believe that I would judge and speak my mind. I know that's hard to believe. But yes, I still do that. But we judge righteously, right? We're careful. We speak of things that are right. We give away what we have. Paul and Silas, what did they say? Silver and gold have I none, but what I have I will freely give you. Are you giving the light of Yahweh to somebody today? Or are you going out, it's Hanukkah, celebrating 8 days of oil? Let someone know what today is, what this time of celebration is, dedicating the temple. And celebrate with them that Yah will dwell amongst us. He's given us Yeshua as that hope and that salvation. And He is our light that leads us. Let's choose Yahweh as we walk. Let's choose His path. Let our lives be in order according to the Torah. And man, let your light so shine among men that they will give praise to the Father for His goodness, and His mercy endures forever.